You're listening to the Love Unplugged podcast, episode 105. Breakups are incredibly difficult to navigate, and sometimes they can be a pivotal moment in our lives that forever changes our life's course. This is the case for my guest today. Following a difficult breakup, she made the courageous decision to make a big change in her life, and it led her to finding her true purpose. Today, we take a deep dive into her journey and the business that she created. So without further ado, let's jump on in. Hey there, I'm your host, Jessica Fergon, and I am passionate about doing the inner work needed to reach your goals. Let me be your guide as we navigate all the fears and insecurities that surface when it's time to step outside of your comfort zone. Along with my knowledgeable guests and industry experts, I'm here to teach you how to reawaken your life purpose and passion and create the steps to turn your intentions into action. Ultimately, my goal is to empower you to rise above those blocks holding you back and start living a life that you are worthy and deserving of. So come on, it's time to slow down, find a comfy spot with your favorite organic tea, and get inspired. Thank you for tuning in to the Love Unplugged podcast. Hello, loves. Today I am joined by the lovely Amy Chan, founder of Renew Breakup Bootcamp, a retreat that takes a scientific and spiritual approach to healing the heart. She is also the editor-in-chief at Heart Hackers Club, an online magazine that focuses on the psychology behind love, lust, and desire. The Observer calls her a relationship expert whose work is like that of a scientific Carrie Bradshaw, and her company has been featured across national media, including Good Morning America, Vogue, Glamour, Nightline, and the front page of the New York Times now. A major congratulations for that. That is quite the amount of accomplishments there.
Thank you.
She also now has a new book called Breakup Bootcamp, The Science of Rewiring Your Heart, published by HarperCollins. So I am just super excited to learn all about your new book. But before we start, Amy, I would love, for those that don't know you yet, I would love for you to share a little bit more about you personally.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Vancouver, and I built my career in marketing here, and I was in a relationship, and I thought I was going to marry the person, and I was living the dream, and I had my whole future set out for me. And that relationship ended, and pretty traumatically. And when it did, I completely fell apart, and so much of what I had based my identity on crashed. And I found myself in a really dark place for about 2 years. And then I eventually, through trying many different types of healing modalities, got myself back up. And I moved to the United States and found my way to New York and had a blank canvas and decided, okay, like what dream is really mine that I want to create? Not dreams that I absorbed through osmosis, through culture and my family and my peer group, but what do I really want to create in my life? And I went out and I did it.
Amazing. It's so interesting how a breakup can have such a huge impact and create a pivotal moment in our lives where things completely change.
Yeah, totally. I really look at breakups as, a redirection of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I work with so many people who are going through breakups and divorces. And at the time, they feel like it's the worst thing that's ever happened to them, just like I had once thought that. And now, of course, in retrospect, you have the hindsight. And I now realize what I thought was the worst thing that had ever happened to me was actually the best thing that had ever happened to me, because it really caused me to pause, step off of the treadmill that I was running on without even knowing that I was, and reevaluate who I was, what I wanted to create, the type of partnership that I wanted. So yeah, a breakup can be a really incredible catalyst to redirect your life.
100%. Now, I want to start at the beginning. What was your journey leading up to you creating this thriving business that you are in right now?
I was working in New York, first off as a luxury hotel reviewer. I've spent my career in marketing and public relations, mostly for luxury brands in the hospitality industry. And I worked my way up the corporate ladder, switching companies, and I found myself as a chief marketing officer of Spin, which, for those of you who don't know, it's a ping pong social club that has several locations across North America, originally started by Susan Sarandon. So I was leading the branding, marketing, and PR for this company. And while I was doing this, I constantly loved, diving into relationships. I was a relationship columnist. I've been one for over 12 years now. And I continue to run my blog on the side. And I noticed that most of the people who contacted me were people who were devastated from breakups, and they were hopeless. They felt helpless. And I knew what a scary place this was because I had once been there, and I had really dark thoughts, even suicidal thoughts when I was in that area. And so I realized I had to help these people because when I went through my breakup, I didn't have a place where I could go and heal and learn about what was going on and really piece myself back together so that I could be healthier when I came out of the other side of the process. And
Mm-hmm.
sure, there was yoga retreats and things like that, but there was nothing specifically focused on the type of pain I was going through. And so I decided to create this safe space for people. And that's how the idea for Breakup Bootcamp was born.
Amazing. Now, when you moved to New York, was that solely because of the breakup and what you were going through?
No, I think the breakup really caused me to stop and reassess the dream that I thought I was chasing and
Mm.
ask myself if that was my dream. Because back then, my dream when I was living in Vancouver was really, yes, work, climb the corporate ladder, but eventually be a stay-at-home mom. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, that's what I wanted. I wanted to be someone's plus one. I wanted to be married to an entrepreneur who would be the breadwinner. And that would mirror the relationship I witnessed growing up with my mom and dad. And I was like, yeah, I want that. And so I never even doubted this path that I was on. And so the breakup made me stop and say, wait a minute, like, what do I actually want? Do I really want to be someone's plus one, or do I want to carve a career and a legacy for myself, and also have a family? But my relationship wasn't going to be the defining thing of my identity, that was a path I was on before. And so I moved to New York because that was a dream that I never even imagined I could have, because getting a visa to work in the United States was really difficult. I was constantly told by people it was impossible. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try. And things kind of worked out in my favor once I really put it out there. Who knows if it's like some spiritual universe thing. But I put it out there that I wanted to live in New York and work in New York. And then I got an opportunity. And so off I went and created this other part of my life.
Were you scared? Because I mean, that's a big move, right? When you're so vulnerable and you're in that delicate state following a breakup and you're kind of reevaluating your life and whatnot, having such a huge move and change can be really scary. So how did you get the courage to take that leap?
I didn't feel scared to move to New York. I was more excited because before New York, I moved to California for a year. I was working in biotech, and that was like my way out of Vancouver. They sponsored my visa, and I was really unhappy living in San Diego. I had no friends. I was, really bored. And so for me, New York, when this opportunity came up, that was like my ticket out. So I was just filled with excitement. And the minute I got there, I hustled. You have to hustle there. Like, you hustle for your
Yes.
friends, you hustle for your network, you hustle for your apartment. It's just a different way of being. And at that stage of my life, that energy, that go, go, go energy really aligned with that stage for me.
Gotcha. Now, when you decided to create this business of yours, you were obviously still working for Spin and you had this whole other career that you had worked so hard for. So, how did you feel about stepping away from everything that you had worked so hard to accomplish for so long into this now new venture?
Great question. It was a hard decision to leave my corporate job because I was leaving something pretty great. Like, it wasn't like I was unhappy at work. I didn't like my team. I loved my team. Like, we were like a family there. My go away party was like the most epic thing. They planned all these surprises for me. Like, we loved each other. I loved the brand. It was so much fun. I had equity, that I was walking away from. I was making good money. And so leaving this company and the stability for this idea that I had was really scary. And I canvassed everyone. I asked everyone for their opinions because I just didn't know. Um, and I think it wasn't that I didn't know. I think I had a knowing that I needed to do this, but the fear was what was causing me to really get stuck in my brain about it and try to outsource the decision making to other people. And I didn't just go, I have this idea, I'm just going to quit my job today. I de-risked the path as much as I possibly could so that I finally got to a point where I was at a crossroads and I had to make a decision. And I told my CEO about my idea. In the beginning, I thought of this as just like a side thing. I didn't think I was going to make it a complete business. And I even remember telling my CEO about my idea. And I was like, yeah, it's just going to be this small thing. And he's always been super encouraging. And he asked me, he's like, well, you could be like the Tony Robbins of relationships. I was like, yeah, right. That can be me. And he's like, why not? And he was just genuinely curious why my vision didn't go there. And I was thinking small and I was playing small, and he was super supportive of letting me launch this business on the side. And when I launched it, I got a lot of media, and with the media attention, I had a literary agent reach out to me and work with me for a book proposal. And so I gave my company 6 months notice. And during that time, I started to build my business. I also accelerated what I was doing at Spin because, I felt guilty. And then I eventually hit a point where I had to say, like, if not now, then when? And I called my mom and I said, hey, mom, I'm going to quit my job. And there's a chance that I might fail. And I only have 3 months runway to survive in New York. If everything fails, will you help me out? And if worst comes to worst, can I move back to your house and live in the basement in Vancouver? And she's like, of course, yes. And so with that safety net, I said, okay, I'm going to do it. If not now, then when?
Oh, there's just so much to unpack. And I love that you said, if not now, then when. I say that to myself all the time whenever I'm like procrastinating a decision or anything like that. I'm like, if I'm not going to do it now, then when? And if it turns into when, it's never going to happen. So I'm like, I need to do this now. I need to like stop thinking about it and just act.
Yeah.
And then my next question is asking your friends for validation that your idea was good and that you should take it and go into a full-time business and you should be doing that. A lot of people do that. And I found that I've done that myself where I'm like, I already know the answer deep down, but I'm asking others to tell me what I want to hear so that I feel like it is the right move to make. So how did you deal with that?
Great question. I had a knowing that I should do this business and do it full time and give it 110%, but I was scared. And so I ignored my intuition by really outsourcing the decision making to other people. And that actually caused a lot of confusion for me. It didn't help me with clarity. And so I had a lot of friends who loved me and who were also entrepreneurs and really grinded it out. And they're like, hey, just so you know, like, this is not a glamorous journey. There's going to be times when you're not going to be able to make rent, when you have to make these sacrifices with lifestyle. And I was really scared, and it actually delayed me from jumping and going full time into my business because of that fear. And my friends were looking out for me. They wanted the best for me. And so their advice was really well intentioned. And so, yeah, it took me to really just listen to this inner knowing and de-risk it to a point where I had money saved in in my bank account. Not a lot, but enough that I wouldn't be homeless the next week if my business failed. And so I didn't feel 100% comfortable, but I realized that I was never going to feel 100% comfortable. When you're risking something and there's such an upside for reward, it's never going to feel 100% easy or comfortable. And you just have to go, and you need to book the venue. You need to commit. You need to hire instructors. You need to do whatever it is that's going to get you the momentum of taking action. Because if you don't, you are going to be frozen with overwhelm, and all of the reasons why you should not is going to paralyze you. So that's what I did. I focused on the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. And I just kept going.
Oh, I love that. That is great advice. Now, taking your side hustle to full time, that's a very courageous thing. So how did you find the courage to take that leap? And then having gone through that experience, what advice would you have for those that need to learn to trust their gut and to also go full time with their side hustle?
I think there's many different ways that you can pursue your side hustle to make it your main hustle. I was in a community of people where it was very on trend to just leave your day job and go live your dreams and do what you love, which are great and make for really awesome motivational quotes on Instagram. But I took a much more realistic, practical approach. And so I had a passion for working in relationships, and I did that on the side. You know, I wrote for free for many years before I ever got paid for an article. I got rejected by over 100 different publications, who most of them just ignored me. Some of them plain out said, "You're not qualified to be a writer," when I first started out. And now I have a published book with HarperCollins. And so I just kept being a master at my craft by practicing it constantly and finding opportunities where I could practice my craft and be a thought leader and carve my niche. And so it wasn't that I one day woke up and I suddenly, had this fan base and I could just go out and do it. No, I've been kind of cultivating a community and a brand and expertise in this area for quite a long time. So my advice for anyone who is wondering about how do they do what they love for a living, I would say start doing it right now. And don't worry about who's going to pay you, who's going to read your blog. Don't worry about any of that stuff. Just put yourself out there. That might be make a video, might be, do a blog. It might be you do an IG live interview. Whatever it is, just start taking small incremental actions every single day that can help you build your expertise in this area, help you master your craft, and then eventually de-risk the path enough where you can feel that you have money saved so that you're not going to be homeless the next day, that you have some opportunities lined up, and be smart about the timing of things. I don't believe that just because you have this dream that came, that you just abandon all of your responsibilities and your timeline and you just jump. I think the best way to do it is to be smart about it. And sometimes that's being strategic in your timing. I do not regret being in corporate. I was, my whole life, I was like, I want to do something I'm so passionate about, but I was in marketing and I liked it, but it wasn't like my dream. But all of that training and marketing was just free training for me, because learning how to market yourself, learning how to do publicity, learning how to manage teams, learning how to manage creatives, which is a completely different breed. All of that I got to exercise by working at these different companies. So by the time I launched my own company, I had all of this training that only, actually going through it could give you. Only books can teach you so much. So I'm super grateful that I took the path of working in corporate before I launched my own business.
I love that you talked to that, because I think it's so important for people to realize that even though, yes, they want to take their job to full time, their side hustle to full time, they can still have so many learnings in their day jobs that they can take with them to that business that they're trying to create. So don't kind of put that to the side and be like, oh, I don't care about that, or I don't want to do this and all that stuff, and just kind of downplay it a little bit. There's just so many opportunities for learning in those corporate jobs or the 9 to 5s that you currently have that will benefit you in your business.
Yeah. And I'd love to add, I feel that in today's culture and social media where we're so trained for instant gratification, there's almost an entitlement of how a lot of people work, where they just don't feel like doing the work that they're doing. Their job is boring and it's not exciting enough. And so, like I believe you have to pay your dues.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that if you want to do something, if you have this passion, this side hustle that you want to do, then do it, and do it for the right reasons. Like, are you doing it because you want a ton of money? Are you doing it for status, for ego? Do an honest check on why are you doing the side hustle in the first place? Because if it is for superficial reasons, like, I don't know if that's going to be the glue that you need during those times in entrepreneurship when it gets really, really low, because there's highs and there's lows. And there's times when you doubt if you've made the right decision and cash flow is grinding to a halt and you're like, oh my God, I wish I just had a corporate paycheck. Because if you're not doing it for the right reasons, those are the moments you're going to crack. So like, pay your dues. And that might mean you work at a job that's not so exhilarating every single day, but that's okay. Like, you can work there and you can do these things on the side that give you that inspiration, and you can try different things. So yeah, that's my point about that.
I love that. Now, what key learnings have you had starting and growing your own business?
Key learnings I've had starting and growing my own business. One would be, get a lawyer. Read your contracts. And I never did this. I would look at contracts and I would skim them and be like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. Or I don't want to deal with the numbers. And you have to grow up and deal with all those things that might be uncomfortable and boring for you. I was in marketing. I like vision. I like brands. Like, I like to make things pretty. I don't like the fine print. I don't like financial models. And I had to really get serious about learning it. And I got a coach to help me with that, because I had so many blocks of areas I wasn't comfortable with. And even just old beliefs I had with money and contracts, and the associations I had with that, and this discomfort I had. And so all of that was part of learning how to have a business. And no, the universe is not going to provide. You need to actually read your contracts, create contracts, and do business properly, so that you're not like a mom and pop shop. So that's one key lesson. The other is work with people that you respect and have the same values and work ethic. And you
Mm-hmm.
can feel that right away. So the times where I've ignored my gut feeling about someone, and I was like, well, you know what? I already paid them, you know, a retainer, so I might as well just keep going. Like, no, like, be very clear with who you want on your team, and don't just react to meeting someone and you're like, oh, I'll put you here. Like, cause that's what I used to do as well. So get clear in who you need on your team in order to grow it. And then when you are working with people, really check in with yourself. And if they don't have that same work ethic, cut it fast.
Yeah, 100%. Ah, those are great key learnings. Now, I want to shift our conversation over to love and relationships. Given everything that you do, I definitely want to learn from you on a few things. So, the very first one is, why do we choose the partners that we choose? Like, how does that all work? What is the psychology behind that attraction?
There's many different reasons why we are drawn to certain people and repelled by certain people. And there's one theory that is coined by Dr. Helen Fisher. She's an anthropologist, and she says we have love maps that we create by the age of around 7 to 8 years old. And this is a combination of what we saw in our parents, our friends, our teachers, and we develop this kind of idea, and it's very subconscious, of who we're drawn to and the type of dynamic we're drawn to. And this kind of builds over time. And so by the time we're in our 20s, we kind of have this type, and we are automatically drawn to some people and repulsed by others. Now, there's also different theories on why we're drawn to some and not others. And one is called attractions of deprivation, which is coined by a relationship expert named Ken Page. And this is the idea that we are drawn to people who can wound us in a very similar way to how we're wounded as children, or provide a very similar emotional experience, because our psyche tries to recreate the scenario of the crime and change its ending. So I know for myself, I had a father who was a businessman, wasn't in touch with emotions. Family was 10th on the priority list. I was fighting for time and attention. And his way of showing love was by giving me money. And so I grew up, and the people I was automatically drawn to were people who I had a very similar emotional experience with, as I had with my father. And the idea behind this attraction of deprivation was my psyche was actually recreating these scenarios to subconsciously change its ending. So I would try to be useful. I would try to be perfect. I would try to be, the perfect CEO's girlfriend, and all these things to earn their love, just like how I was trying to earn the love of my father. So there's that as well. And one other thing is that human beings, we like what's familiar. So this is the same across the board, whether it's food, music, or even people. So if you were familiar with, say, a father figure or a mother figure who's very unavailable, that's what your norm is. Your baseline is that. So when you meet people who provide that same emotional experience, you actually feel familiar with them. So you might be like, oh, I'm drawn to you. And the person who might be really healthy and stable, when you didn't have that growing up, you might be like, oh, you're boring. You're way too nice. I'm not interested in you. I have no chemistry. And there are ways that you can actually increase your exposure to familiarity of healthy love and decrease your exposure to unhealthy love, so that you shift your baseline of familiarity and then start to become drawn to people who are healthy for you.
How do you do that? How do you break that unhealthy pattern?
There's a term I coined in my book called the chemistry compass.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really to say that we all have a compass that is pointing us into the direction of who we're drawn to and who we're not drawn to. And if we didn't have a healthy model of what love looks like and feels like growing up, it's not that we ourselves are broken. It's that our chemistry compass might be broken and need some tinkering. And so part of what you can do to start fixing your chemistry compass is to understand that you don't go from 0 to 100. You don't go from toxic, unhealthy relationships to suddenly being drawn to someone who's healthy and stable. You will probably reject that as boring, or there's no chemistry, or there's something wrong, or you might even self-sabotage that healthy relationship because it's not familiar to you. Your psyche is almost on a subconscious level rejecting this different type of relating and emotional experience because you're not used to it. And so you want to gradually increase your exposure to healthy. And this might mean you do a dating experiment where you only date people who seem to be compatible and have similar values, who appear to be healthy, secure, and intentionally want to date you. And you might not feel this automatic chemistry right away, but you have to understand that you're rewiring your chemistry compass. So you give these people a chance. And this might mean you go 2 times, 3 times, and you see how it goes. And what happens is, as you are with people, not only romantically, even in your friend group, it's important that you're surrounding yourself with people you feel safe with, where you can trust, because all of these people are wiring your neural pathways to what does trust and healthy love feel like. And so it's all interrelated, and it's important that you're looking at your entire village, your entire tribe, and not just your romantic interests.
Gotcha. Okay. That's a great way to approach it for sure. Just giving them a try and just being patient with the process and seeing kind of what happens from there.
Yeah,
I love your
definitely.
take on it. It's definitely different. I never thought about it that way looking back over my past relationships, to be honest. Now I'm kind of seeing some patterns that maybe wasn't really aware of in the past.
Would you say that you dated people where you felt similar emotional experiences?
I would say that I've dated people who have an issue with commitment in a
Mm,
way.
hmm.
And I'm guessing that's maybe stemmed from childhood.
Right. And so when someone had an issue with commitment, how did you feel?
I just kind of let it go. Like I just dragged on the relationship even though I knew it wasn't really going anywhere.
So you would keep trying.
Yeah, I would just keep trying and seeing, hopefully, hoping for the best and that things would change, but no, they didn't.
Right. Yeah. So that it's really interesting, right? Because the type of person might look very different, but if you
Mhm.
look at the emotional experience, is there a pattern in that? So in what you're saying, it seems like you've had a few relationships where they didn't want commitment, so you're investing more, you're trying more, you're hoping for change to happen. And that might have felt very disempowering, right? So you draw it back into what were the emotions that you felt and that emotional experience. And you may see a similarity to the emotions you felt growing up with one of your primary caregivers. And, that's a great way to start saying like, wait, is my chemistry compass broken or does it need, some tinkering? Because if that emotional experience is repeating, then that is a pattern and that stems from some beliefs that could, get some updating.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Now, when it comes to attachment, I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So for those of you listening who are new to attachment theory, uh, there are three basic attachment styles. And the idea of attachment theory is that we develop an attachment style, which will pretty much determine how we relate romantically in our adult lives. And this is determined by around 2 years old. Now, there's different theories that some say you're born with your attachment. Some say it's all from how your parents treated you or your primary caregiver did. So, there's still a debate on that. But they have done the study, which is called the strange situation test. And they've looked at babies and they followed these babies until they were older to see if their attachment style continued. And what they found was there's three styles. One is secure, meaning they're not afraid of intimacy. They're also not codependent. They don't create catastrophes whenever there's something wrong. They don't devote their identity and their sense of self-worth to their partner. And they're emotionally keel. So when there's hardships or ups and downs, they're able to work through them. Now, that's about 50% of the population. About 20 to 25% of the population is avoidantly attached, meaning they subconsciously suppress their attachment system. It doesn't mean that they can't get into relationships, but when someone gets a little too close, they actually do what's called deactivation strategies, and they do things that push them away and squelch intimacy. And the third is anxiously attached. I mostly work with people who have an anxiously attachment style because these are the ones that take breakups the hardest. They have a tendency to put a lot of their sense of self-worth and identity in their relationship. They have more a tendency to be codependent, and they have an inherent fear that they will be abandoned or rejected at any time. So they are the quickest to perceive any offset emotion that might signify that there is a threat to the connection. And when this happens, their nervous system kind of goes like ringing alarm bells, and they kind of get into like the survival state of a fear that their relationship is in jeopardy. They will do what's called protest behavior, which might include punishing their partner, manipulation games, threatening to leave, calling like over and over and over again, or even hedging, like dating other people or sleeping with other people just to get the edge off because you have so much anxiety about the person that you're with.
Holy smokes. I've never heard about it like laid out that way before.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, that's insane. I've definitely like you see this type of behavior in the movies and whatnot, but to see that is actually a thing that is caused by an issue with attachment. Like I never knew that.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Now, getting over an ex, say you do get dumped or you break up with someone yourself, how do you get over that? So, what are some really good tools that someone can use and apply in the situation so that they're able to navigate all those feelings and come out of it in a better place?
Some tools for those who are fresh out of a breakup include acknowledging that it's completely normal to feel out of sorts, even crazy, or that the rug has been ripped out from underneath me. That's what I hear a lot. Because you're like a mammal in love that's sensing rejection or a threat to the connection. And so that puts you in a survival state. And there is a theory that this drives you into what's called primal panic. Now, on a chemical level, something to understand is that you have neural pathways that have been wired together in this, every time you got breakfast together, had sex, had, sweet loving emoticon text messages, you're getting hits of dopamine. So you have all these neural pathways that have been wired together that connect you to your ex. So after a breakup, even though on a cognitive level, you know that the relationship is over, your body is like, what the fuck is going on? It's in complete state of shock. And it's used to getting its source of dopamine, those fixes of oxytocin and all those feel good chemicals from your partner. And so that's why you might get this sudden urge to text them one more time or check their social media feed because your brain is craving for that dopamine hit. So it's going to try and get that hit by looking at old photos or checking their social media. And what you want to do after a breakup is you need to detox because what happens is if you don't keep strengthening those neural pathways by looking at their feed or by calling them or seeing them, those neural pathways will eventually start to prune away and start to weaken. And you want to be proactive and create a strategy on how you're going to get your needs met and your fixes of dopamine and feel good chemicals in other ways, in healthy ways. So you create an actual plan. And this might mean you create plans to see your girlfriends or you get, a Swedish massage and you have exercise fit in and you do have all these different things that can help you fill up this space that used to be taken up by your relationship. And if you don't, what you're going to find is in that empty space, you're going to fill it up with thoughts of your ex. You're going to ruminate about your ex, or you're going to fantasize about your ex, or you might rationalize reasons why you might get back together. And also honor that there's different stages of after a separation, which very similarly look like the stages of grief. And it starts with shock, and then it goes into depression, and then it goes into anger, and then it goes into denial, and then it goes into, you might even do a relapse where you actually get back together with your ex, and then it ends at acceptance. And you might bounce around. It's not linear, but you do go through all of these stages. And the sooner you can actually just accept that you're in the stage of grief and instead of resisting it and just accept it and let yourself process your emotions, the sooner you'll move through the stage and get to a path of acceptance. And one thing to consider is if you are constantly thinking about your ex, analyzing your ex, thinking about what could have happened, what should have happened, you're still in a relationship with your ex. Whether there's a title or there's a divorce paper or whatever, you're still in a relationship emotionally and spiritually with your ex if your focus is there. So find something else. Find an empowering fantasy for you to divert your energy and your focus to. Find things that light you up. And you'll find that when you start diverting that energy and focus and start doing things that make you feel empowered and inspired and, loved and supported, you'll gradually stop obsessing so much about what your ex did or didn't do.
Ugh. Just like hearing you go through those phases, I remember them vividly, and they're so not fun. And I just love that you're helping people get through that.
Thank you.
Now, with Renew Breakup Bootcamp, I want to hear what it's all about. What can someone experience by joining that?
Yeah, so we do physical retreats. Right now they're on pause because of COVID, and right now we have virtual retreats. But essentially the program is the same. So we bring in a team of experts, ranging from psychologists, behavioral scientists, sex educators, even a dominatrix. And we take women through a journey of processing their emotions in a healthy way and identifying the subconscious beliefs and patterns that are causing the same emotional experiences to repeat, because it's never just about the ex. It's recycled pain. Often this breakup is just a band-aid that got ripped off. And then you're having to deal with all of the compound trauma that wasn't dealt with in relationships before, or even the heartbreak you had with your mom or your dad. All that stuff comes to the surface, right? Time doesn't heal all wounds. Doing the work to heal the wounds is what heals the wounds. And so we really work on what can we do to set up your foundation so that as you enter your next chapter, you're not repeating the same patterns. You're not just walking the same bridge over and over again. And we do this through pretty intensive programming, but there is a complete journey and an arc to how the programming is. And we've had wild success. We had women who have been in toxic relationships for 7 years who have gotten out. We have had women leave narcissistic relationships and are now married. We've had people who were in, a relationship with an addict, an abuser, and went through therapy for 7 years and kind of hit a wall. They come to Breakup Boot Camp and now they're like living their dreams, starting nonprofits. Like, we've had so many different stories of women who just never were taught the tools of how do you handle a heartbreak? How do you handle the emotional roller coaster? How do you learn how to choose a healthy partner? They don't teach you these things in school. And so given the tools, you're armed with like, oh, now I have the awareness to make better decisions that's going to serve me.
Oh, that sounds like an incredible deep dive type program that you've offered to really transform someone's life.
Yeah, I don't believe in fluff. I don't believe in like, just say positive mantras and everything's gonna be great. Actually, if you repeat positive mantras that you don't believe, it actually has an adverse effect. It actually doesn't make you feel better. It can actually make you feel worse. Mantras, like positive affirmations, only work when you actually believe it, because your brain will reject what it doesn't think is true. And so a lot of these things, like, there is no quick pill. Like, there's no like, Breakup Boot Camp is not going to solve your problems, right? Like, it's not going to heal all of your pain and make you forget about your ex. It's not. It's going to equip you with tools so you know how to manage the emotions, so you can have awareness of what's going on and your patterns, and it helps you shift your patterns. But there is no easy solution, right? This is hard work, and the relationship and the breakups and the pain, it's not bad. There's no good or bad. There's an opportunity to learn and to grow. And so, like, I really caution anyone who tries to have any quick fix, because it's just not going to work.
No, you got to be committed to putting in the work. Otherwise, you're not going to get anything out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now let's talk about this new book that you have. So I'd love to hear, what was your experience writing a book? What is the book about? What do you love most about this whole opportunity that you've been given with this whole other way of reaching people?
My book has been in the making for a long time, way before I even started writing the book. And I've been through so much heartache in my life. I feel like I've been through enough heartache to last 3-4 lifetimes. And I never understood it, because I was able to excel in every other part of my career. And, I never had a hard time with friends or community or work or any of those things. But when it came to love, I was constantly just in so much pain. And so I started writing as an outlet, and I started writing because I thought, hey, if I could write and maybe someone else could feel a little less alone and a little more understood because of what I'm putting out there, then maybe my pain isn't for nothing. And so that's what I did. And that's what I've created my business around. It's like, it's given me meaning. It's given me mission and given me purpose to use that pain that I've gone through and alchemize it into creating positive impact. And so every single heartbreak, every single lesson, every single person that came in and out of my life has been critical to the plot. And, it was intense writing the book because I also had to dive back into memories and associate into those memories, like from how it was growing up and my relationship with my father and some brutal breakups. And like, there were moments where writing it, I would just get so teary eyed and emotional that I would have to take a break. And so, yeah, and I've been through so many iterations of the book. I wrote 9 proposals, and the book itself, I wrote almost two books. And like, there's something in writing called kill your darlings, where you just delete a bunch of what you wrote. And I deleted I have like 70,000 words that I wrote that are not going to be in the book. And so, yeah, it's been such a process, but I'm so excited about it because I know this book will change lives in the way, not like you read a book and your life is going to change, but it will shift a perspective. It will provide one tool. It will have you think about relationships a little bit differently. It will help you be a bit more aware the next time you're about to make a decision if you should invest in a toxic relationship or not. I know that. And so if you can just get one tool, one insight, I think that can be life-changing because change happens 1 degree at a time. And those little small incremental changes is what shifts the direction of your life. And I know this book can do that. And I wish I had this book growing up because no, I don't have regrets, but yeah, I do. I do regret spending so many years of my life, so much of my energy and focus on guys that didn't give a shit about me, on toxic relationships. And it wasn't because it's their fault, but I take full accountability that I allowed these situations to happen. And all the energy and focus I could have spent building my empire. That's 10 years of my life and energy and focus that I could have spent doing good for the world. But no, I was just ruminating and obsessed over people that didn't really like me or invest in me. And so I hope that someone reading this book can learn some tools and create a healthier relationship with themselves, which will automatically have a ripple effect of the relationships they have with other people.
Amazing. You must have had a level of healing as well going through all that and remembering all these emotions and experiences that you've had and kind of creating this book and writing it all down.
Yeah, because this book is part memoir too. I talk a lot about my own stories. There's a lot of stories of the women who've come through Renew and their stories. And so, yeah, it was super cathartic. Writing is a very cathartic process. And, I even changed the ending. So I changed the ending like a week before like the deadline was due. I changed the
Oh my.
chapter. And so it's really interesting. My partner hasn't even read the book yet. I'm so excited for him to read the book because he like made it into the book.
That's awesome. All right. So, given everything that you've learned about love and the fact that I truly feel like self-love is the foundation for every other relationship in your life, I'd love to know what self-love means to you and what that practice looks like in your life.
So a lot of people talk about self-love and like just love yourself. And then there's all these motivational quotes on Instagram, which is great. And
Mm-hmm.
I really take a realistic approach to self-love. I don't believe that self-love is like this place you get to and then you just stay there like it's some island and you land on self-love island and you just stay there. I believe self-love is a practice and it's a muscle that you build. And every single day, say we have 100 decisions that we make in a day. every single decision you make, it could be rooted in self-love or it could be rooted in self-hatred. And there are going to be days where more of your decisions are rooted in self-love and some are rooted in self-hatred. And there's going to be days when it's the other way around. And I think the goal is to have more of your decisions rooted in self-love. So you have more days that are in a state of self-love, if that makes sense. And so I say this because I feel that I love myself, but there's also times when I do things that are not loving. Like when I look at my photo and I'm like, ew, I hate how I look here. That's not loving. And I know that I'm doing it. So for me, even an act of self-love is when I see that photo, instead of vocalizing it and putting energy behind words and saying out loud how much I hate that photo, I might think the thought and then I don't say anything. I don't ruminate and get hung up on the thought of how much I dislike the photo. And so there are days where I wake up and I'm like, oh, I know I shouldn't just, the first thing I do, look at my phone and scroll and do these things. That's not an act of self-love. I know that gets me into an anxiety spiral. But there's days that I do that. So I like this approach because that means anyone starting tomorrow morning, you have a fresh day, 100 decisions. Make those decisions as much as you possibly can rooted in self-love. It means that you could start at any time, anywhere, and you don't have to be at some place of like, you go to all the yoga retreats and you meditate every day and only then are you healed. Like, no, you can start right now with all those small decisions, and those small decisions have a compound effect, and that's what shifts the direction of your life.
Oh, that's such a great perspective on self-love, and I totally agree with you. Now, if anybody wants to learn more about you, where can they connect with you?
So they can find me on renewbreakupbootcamp.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at Miss Amy Chan. That's MISSAMYCHAN. And you can buy my book, Breakup Bootcamp, The Science of Rewiring Your Heart. It's being published by HarperCollins. You can buy it on Amazon or your local bookstore. And if you have more questions on anything, DM me on Instagram. I'll totally answer you and give you any resources that I can.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Amy, for taking the time to join me, for sharing your story and knowledge on how we can better navigate those breakups and the emotions that follow it. It's such a hard thing to go through, and I know your advice is going to be super beneficial for anyone listening that may be experiencing it right now.
Thank you. It's been great being on the show.
I'm Jessica, and thanks for tuning in today to Love Unplugged, the podcast. If there are any questions or topics you'd love answered on the show, head on over to www.projectloveco.com and share your request with me. If you haven't yet, go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and share it with a loved one. Your feedback means the world to me, and the community we've created is what fuels our discussions here. After all, this is all for you. Join me next time for another unplugged conversation.